Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be talking about the grand final of the Copenhagen Major. So it just ended, I don't even think an hour ago, sitting down to record this video. And I mean, not a ton to talk about, just the one match, but we'll probably also take a look at maybe some of the stats, probably, and specifically from the playoffs. I don't know if I want to look at all of them in general. So Herds, Felipox, KZ, JV92, and Nade up against Nesk, Palu, Lugonis, Resets, and Volps, W7M versus Liquid. Best of 5, but as you probably well know, it did not go even close to 5 maps. A clean 3-0. And this is the only non-best of 5 we've seen in majors since the return to offline play. So, you know, Mexico and Sweden and Charlotte and Berlin and Jönköping, all 5 of those majors went to map 5. And the SIs, the last 2 that we had, 2023, we saw a 3-1 victory for G2 over W7M, and the one before that, we saw a 3-1 victory for TSM over Empire. So not as close at the Invitationals, but still no 3-0s, and now we have finally a 3-0 in recent history, and again the only of the last 6 majors that did not go 5 maps. So a bit anticlimactic, and I think this one you sort of saw coming at a certain point in the series. So let's talk about the maps: Skyscraper, Bank, and Chalet. Skyscraper, people were saying that this was pretty bold for W7M to go to. I think Liquid like 7-0'd them or something not too long ago. And then they played each other on Bank in Swiss, right? And W7M won at 7-5. And so maybe you give the edge to them there. And then on Chalet, I mean... and actually, Skyscraper was W7M's map pick, and Bank was Liquid's map pick. Keep that in mind. And then Chalet, like this, I mean, that's just a W7M map through and through. They're one of the best, if not just the best, Chalet team in the world. They're 15-5 on it, and I guess now 16-5 after this win. But before this, they were 15-5 going back to like last March, so 75% win rate. Just a handful of losses. And I mean, they have a pretty good win rate on every map, but I think especially that one. So looking at how things went down specifically on Skyscraper, it looked like W7M were just sort of running away with it. They went up 5-1 after attack, and generally Skyscraper are a very defender-sided map, but this ended up being a very attacker-sided. You'd see 9 of the 12 rounds went to the attackers. Liquid actually make the comeback, so again, W7M go up 5-1. Liquid gets that one win in the middle, but then Liquid 4 rounds in a row to bring it to 5-5, and then unfortunately for Liquid, 2 rounds for W7M, so they close it out 7-5. This is pretty similar to what happened when they played in Swiss on Bank. It went to a 5-5, and then W7M just took the last 2 rounds to close it out 7-5. No overtime needed. Second map, we get to see some overtime, so not a lot of overtime overall in the playoffs. I think only like 3 of the maps in all of the quarters, the semis, and the grand final were overtime, if I'm remembering that right. Liquid gets off to a decent start. They go up 2-0, but actually nobody wins more than 2 rounds in a row through regulation. So it's 2 for Liquid, 2 for W7M, and then Liquid, W7M, W7M, Liquid, W7M, Liquid. And they're 5-5 again on Bank, just like they were in Swiss, just like they were on Skyscraper. But then Liquid gets one, and then W7M gets one. So finally in overtime. And then finally somebody gets 3 rounds in a row, so the one before overtime and the 2 in overtime. W7M closes it out. They're up 2-0, and at this point it's like almost hopeless for Liquid. Not only do they have to win 3 maps in a row, but they have to do it on starting with Chalet, which is just an incredible map for W7M, and they're not able to do it. It's just a little bit back and forth. W7M Liquid, W7M Liquid, W7M Liquid. It does go 3-3 in the first half, and then they get to go onto the attacking half of Chalet, which is, if there are some attacker-sided maps, certainly Chalet is one of them, but 4 rounds in a row on the defense for W7M, and they close it out 3-0 fashion. Maybe not super dominant on the first 2 maps, but they close it out dominantly on the third to, again, secure that 3-0 and to win it. And Liquid was pretty heavily favored by the community. I mean, I think really W7M was the favorite to win it, even if the community wanted Liquid to win it. I think on paper W7M was the favorites, and in people's hearts Liquid, they wanted them to win. Man, just seeing Nesk specifically, because I think it was Palu last time or the time before that was like really, really heartbroken after the loss. But Nesk, you just head down on the table, like clearly crying, and all of the W7M players come over to shake their hands and whatnot. Ness is still there, and I think even after they listed, he's still like, it's it's enough to bring a guy to tears. It was quite sad. And if I was looking through some things, I believe that makes Palu and Nesk two of the only players to ever be 3-time runners-up at majors and SIs. So this isn't including like Pro League finals or anything, just the actual majors and the SIs. It's those two, and I believe Shepard, Joystick, and Julio are the only other ones to have that accolade. And obviously it's not the best thing to have to lose 3 grand finals at majors and SIs, but even to make it there, just that's a very coveted thing. So nothing to be too ashamed about, but it really does suck because the other 3 players on that list, they have won something. A Joystick and Shepard have won an SI. Julio, I guess, has also won an SI. So they certainly have their accolades, but these guys, so still never won anything. Ness did win a Pro League Finals way back when, but not quite a major, not quite an SI, and Palu still nothing to show. So we'll see. Maybe Liquid's going to keep at it. Maybe they won't. Maybe it's time for a change. And I guess they did just make a change bringing on Volps, but I mean, as far as like Nesk and Palu go, we'll see. And then as for W7M, the rosters change up a bit. We still have the core of JV, Herds, and KZ that they had since stage 1 of 2022. They had GDN and they had Volps, and then they replaced GDN with Julio, and then recently they replaced Julio and Volps with Bellapox and Nade, and all the while the roster, their performance had just gotten better and better. Pretty similar results, I guess, regionally throughout 2022. They were just like the best team over and over. Not always in Copa Elite 6, but I think they got second, first. And in this stage, in the playoffs, they ended up 3rd. They lost to FaZe, and then they beat their final opponent. So they didn't get top 2 seed to go straight to stage 2, but that makes their run even more impressive. They only dropped a single map in the whole tournament. It was to Eminem. And had Eminem played a little bit better, not choked so many rounds on Cafe, maybe this would have been Eminem here instead, or at least W7M wouldn't have been here. But what I was trying to say before, at international competition, they made top 12 in Charlotte, and then they made top 4 in Berlin, losing 2-0 to FaZe, and then they made top 4 again at Jönköping. This time they lost 2-1 to Liquid, so the same placement. They made top 4, but they had a better performance, losing 2-1 rather than 2-0, and then runners up at SI, and now first place here. So basically just strictly better results each and every time. And I mean, you can't top this though, a 3-0 victory in a major grand final. I guess you could get a 3-0 victory at the SI final, but we'll see. I mean, they're very clearly the best team in the world, and I think most people would say they were the best team last year. They weren't the world champions, but if you just add everything up over the course of all of the events, very clearly they were the best. And now they actually have the trophy to show for it. JV, who's might be the least talked about player on this team, because I think Herds as the main entry has been very flashy. And if you look back, he's been, I think, top 2 rated at all of their events except for Charlotte. And Charlotte's just a real oddity for the team in general. But and this does make sense being their like main entry. But Berlin and Jönköping and SI, and I think at this tournament he was top 2 rated in all of them. And I think that's especially notable because it's always KZ that people talk about as the big name. He was their best performer in the SI Grand Final, but going into the Grand Final, I believe he's their worst performing player, maybe even after. I don't remember quite off the top of my head. But anyways, JV really popped off in the final, dropped 18 kills, I think, on Bank, and then 10 on the other 2 maps, so double digits all 3 times, including that nuclear performance on Bank. Which was actually the closest one, so he had the biggest impact on the closest map. And then Bellapox and Nade, probably underrated players coming into this. I think people knew that they were solid, but they hadn't proven themselves like the guys on this roster. And then again, Herds and KZ, probably the 2 big names that you talk about this roster that are still here now that Volps is gone. And then Nesk put in a good performance, and Lagonis had a lights out tournament. This guy is a hard support IGL, and he put up really crazy numbers. Nesk, good tournament. Volps, he started off a little bit slow and he ended a little bit slow, but in the middle he was really, really good. Palu, pretty solid, but just definitely not up to Palu's expectations. Maybe that was part of the reason why he was not as disappointed. He knew that he played badly. Nesk was playing pretty well. I guess only +2 at the end, but he was kind of popping off on Chalet. 5-1 on the entry. Volps, 2-13 on the entry. I mean, just unfortunate for the guy. He kind of let his team down a bit against his old team of W7M, and then I guess I didn't mention resets, but here in the middle, always kind of a quiet guy, but usually pretty solid. I guess that does it for the match, so like I said, we'll just look at some stats pretty quickly. The leaderboards, I don't find this like terribly interesting, and especially for this event, because there was phase 1 that a ton of teams played in that a bunch of teams didn't play in phase 1, right? That just went automatically to phase 2, and that was like a lot of the teams that played in phase 3. So like Nina, Psycho, Citizen, Herd, Solotov, all of these guys played in phase 1, so you know their stats are probably padded from playing against lower tier of competition, especially Nina, you know, didn't even make it out of phase 1. Same thing with like Methy here, highest cost, tied for highest cost, but didn't make it out of phase 1. So, you know, maybe eliminate a few of those guys. Solotov with a really crazy performance, also played more maps than anybody else, but still plus 55 is crazy. Nesk best on the entry. Velopox with 7 clutches, 4 of them coming in just against Sonics in the semifinals, and 19 plants out at Nade. So we'll look at the team stats, and I think we're just going to maybe look at the teams that were in playoffs. So W7M, I mean, yeah, crazy stat. Everybody went positive here. Everybody went positive here. Everybody went positive on rating. I don't know. Has that ever happened ever? Like for any team in a big event to go all positive on rating and KD and entry? Yeah, really, really good stuff. All having clutches, at least 2 clutches. Just the sheer number of clutches here is insane. Like they played 13 maps, but they had 11, 14, 18 clutches in 13 maps. That is nuts. Not to mention, you know, 24 plants, so just shy of, I guess, 2 plants per map, which isn't an absolute ton, but maybe as far as the standards go these days. I mean, what can you say? These guys are so good. Velopox apparently is the main IGL, and I'm not completely clear on, like, the history of that, because I think I heard, I don't know, was it Julio, was it Volps, was it Herds? Back when? Did it change around? Is it actually Velopox now? Because everybody keeps saying that, but why is he? I don't know. He's sitting on the end, right? They put Herds in the middle, but maybe that's because he's the main entry, so we can better look at the 2 monitors next to. I don't know. Whatever the case. Lights out performance. I haven't seen the actual official MVP. I mean, clearly give it to Herds or Velopox. Just these numbers in general are incredible, but then these numbers as not your main entry and as your main IGL probably makes up for the small difference there. And then on Liquid, yeah, Nesk ends as the highest rated player, resets slightly negative here, so 2 players negative on the entry, 1 player negative on KD and rating, so they miss out a little bit on what I was just describing for W7M, but still really solid stats across the board. Really, really rare that you see Palu as the 4th highest rated player on his team. He's usually number 1, maybe like number 2 or something if somebody else really pops off. Lagonis, though, plus 12, not a ton of entry engagements, that's not his role, 17 plants, but again, hard breach, IGL, going plus 12, yeah, lights out performance. Unfortunate that he couldn't get the win along with the just really good performance from everybody, and maybe some people didn't perform as well at certain points, but just a good tournament from pretty much all of them. On Sonic, Citizen, the big performer once again. He had a really poor regular stage, but then playing in like the especially the LCQ, he was great, and then he was great here. I think he was even their highest rated player at SI, if I remember right, and I think people forget about that because their performance wasn't great. Sonics only made just top 16. They made it winner side, but then they lost twice. But still really good stats from them across the board. On phase, Handy ends up on top pretty significantly. Cyber, I think, had a kind of a poor final match that put him a bit lower. KDS, the new guy on the roster, not doing super well. On Nip, Psycho with a crazy performance. Muzi, good to see him doing well. He's been pretty bad for quite a while, but at least he had a good tournament here. They only made quarterfinals, but still top 8's not too terrible. G2, yeah, Benja and Doki, the 2 big performers. You definitely needed to see more out of Virtue or Alamau or Blur, probably Virtue or Alamau if you wanted to see them go deeper. On Eminem, Solotop over 200 kills. I believe these are the two highest killing players, and I think Nesk is actually the 3rd. He had 148 beating out Tyrant, and I wasn't paying that much attention. And again, there was a big discrepancy in the number of maps played by some teams. Like GT played 7 and Eminem played 18, right? So only player to break 200 though was Solotov. Really, really good tournament from him. And then finally, I guess as far as the playoff teams go, Scars, yeah, Rek, not quite so good in the final match, but he was really good throughout the tournament before that. And then solid performances across the board. I guess Tayu not doing quite so well, but I guess he is their main planter. So everything adding up there, and then I'll just scroll through the rest. I don't really want to talk about anything else, but if you want to take a look, oh yeah, Joystick much better than the rest of his team. Joystick on LAN is still quite a thing, and Space Station, Dark Zero, not living up to expectations. Same thing with M80, Spoit, and Diaz doing quite well for themselves though. D Plus and Falcons, O-Kill's the big standout on Falcons. Nobody a big standout on Revan, but nobody doing super poorly. Sandbox with 1 big standout, Barrel with a few decent players. Same thing with 6 Karma, Nina, the highest rated player in the tournament. On Fury, a couple good players. Oda, the standout on Bliss. Ape on Elevate. Damali on La Vega. And I think that does it. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, corrections, any of that good stuff, feel free to leave it below. I always love to hear from people. A like and a subscription would be very much appreciated. And with all of that being said, I will catch you guys next time.